Hello reptile fans, I'm Wally from Supreme Gecko, and today we're talking about feeding your dubias. Do you breed dubias? Are you thinking of breeding dubias? If not, you're missing out on a golden opportunity to both feed a quality insect to your reptiles and to save a ton of money on feeder insects. But you must feed them correctly, and in this video I'm going to share with you how important their food is, the best foods to feed them, which foods do more damage than good, and how to save a shitload of money on their food. And make sure to watch to the very end of this video for a very, very important tip on feeding dubias. I've been keeping reptiles, geckos, for about 20 years, and I've been breeding dubias for almost that entire time. I've made my mistakes, but I have learned so much. In this video, I'm going to share with you what does work and what does not work when feeding your dubias. Let's cut to the chase. If you're buying feeder insects for your reptiles from a pet store, you are throwing money down the toilet, period. Start breeding dubias. Start today, but breed them the correct way and feed them the correct foods. Please note, this is not a dubia care video, but you can find a video that I did on setting up a dubia colony right here. Let's take a minute and talk about why you should be breeding dubias. Most importantly, they're a great food source. Their size range allows them to be fed to multiple sized reptiles, from dwarf geckos to small anoles and all the way up to bearded dragons. Dubias are higher in protein and calcium and lower in chitin. Chitin. What's chitin? Chitin is the exoskeleton of insects. Lower chitin allows for better digestion for your reptiles. I bet you're surprised to find this out, aren't you? Check this graph out. You can find it at dubiaroaches.com. Dubias are higher in protein and calcium than crickets and mealworms. And take a quick look at the hornworms. Yeah, I'll come back to that point in just a second. If you compare dubias to, say, crickets, dubias are slower moving and easier for your pet to catch. For this reason, I absolutely do not feed my baby cresteds and baby gargoyles crickets. Also, dubias are easier to keep and breed. Here's what you need: plastic container, egg cartons, heat mat, and what else? And that's it. Oh, and the dubias. That's it. Did you know dubias are far cleaner than any feeder insect and have virtually no odor? Here's your test. Leave a container of crickets and a container of dubias under your reptile enclosure for a week and a half. Then go check out those containers and tell me which one smells as bad as a 6th grader's gym locker. Crickets die in a week.
You're not gonna hate man. Yes.
Amen. They need heat, yes, I said heat, food, moisture, and space. Crickets chirp, and chirp, and chirp. Ever have one get out in your house or apartment and then you can't find it for a week? And you can save money on keeping dubias. Well, now you have my attention. Let's do a little cost comparison. Yes, here's where I'm going to save you big money. Those reptile keepers using and feeding hornworms swear by them, and I just don't understand this. As we've seen earlier, hornworms are a third in protein and less than a quarter of the calcium of dubia roaches. And the cost of one hornworm? $1. We already know the downfalls of crickets. I still use crickets occasionally to offer a different prey item. Okay, I just love watching geckos chase down a cricket. But from a cost standpoint, and this is by ordering in bulk, crickets are about 1 to 2 cents a piece. More like a dime a piece if you purchase them in a pet store. Mealworms. I used to order a lot of mealworms in the past, 40,000 about once a month. If you order them in bulk, they are much less expensive, and you can hibernate any portions you're not feeding currently for a month or two in a spare fridge. Shh, don't use the main fridge. Just saying. but the cost is still around $20 per 5,000 in bulk. Sounds pretty inexpensive, right? About a half a cent a worm. But that still adds up if you're feeding more than 1 or 2 animals. And dubias, well, they're free. Yes, free. Well, other than the cost of the food. And we're going to talk about how to save big money on food in just a minute. Yes, there's several grow your own mealworm videos out there on YouTube that are really good. But breeding and raising mealworms is work, let me tell you. And a lot of work in collecting, sifting, separating, sifting, feeding. Did I mention sifting? I'm going to assume you're now convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that dubias are the best foods that you can feed your reptiles, both from a nutritional standpoint and from an economical standpoint. If you have any reason why you don't agree with this, please leave your reason below in a comment. Do you know why the food you feed your dubias is so important? Dubias need only a few things to live and breed. Food, hydration, and I'm not talking about water, but some form of moisture and heat. And heat is actually a bit down on this list. Big time breeders all know the next fact. What you feed your dubias, protein, fat, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals, passes directly to your reptiles. Whether you're keeping leopard geckos, bearded dragons, chameleons. Finally, before we get into the main part of this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, because you know you're going to like this video. And if you don't want to miss more gecko, isopod, feed or insect videos in the future, make sure you subscribe now and hit that notification all button. Let's talk specifically about dubia food. But let's start with the do not use these foods discussion. I know there are a ton of dubia chows in the market. Some are okay, some are absolutely junk. Some include items like processed paper and cardboard in them. And the cost, $9 a pound, $10 a pound, $12 a pound. Well, I'll just make my own dubia food then, after I make a cake. And yes, there are a lot of how to make your own dubia food videos on YouTube. Check these videos out. There are so many foods people add to their recipes to feed their dubias. Fish food, bean powder, woven wheat, really? Fruit Loops, really? You don't need all of these foods, you really don't. Dust your dubias. I'm a huge believer in dusting your feeder insects. The right dust will stay on the insects for a long time and is directly ingested by your reptiles. Dust your insects. Sorry, I'll quit saying that. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Well, you could just buy dog food. It's cheap and it's easy to buy in bulk at your grocery store. Hey, not even my alternate me would suggest something like that. While cheap dog food is, well, cheap, dog food and cat food can be too high in proteins, and this can cause problem issues with your reptiles. Consuming foods too high in proteins can cause uric acid buildups in roaches, which can be stored in their bodies. Uric acid can kill the adult roaches. Uric acid can also easily be passed on to your reptiles, and this has been found to cause gout. Dog food is only good for one thing. Nice catch, Gus. How about fish food? Far too expensive. Let's just move on. Peas, beans, spirulina, not needed, and they are too expensive. Calcium, not needed. But Wally, these foods that I'm feeding have vitamins and minerals in them that my reptiles need in their diets. Unlike the buildup of proteins in the roaches' bodies that then can be passed on to your pets, these additional minor nutritional additions are just not needed if you're properly dusting your feeder insects. That doesn't mean that I don't gut load. What is gut loading? Well, maybe we'll talk about that in just a moment. But I'm using crystals that have calcium already in them, and that's what my reptiles need, a lot of calcium in their diet. One of my all-time just shake your head pet peeves is when I see a bottle of water crystals calcium fortified in pet stores. The amount of calcium passed on to your reptiles using this product is minimal. What's the alternative? Say it with me, dust your insects. Now it is very important to hydrate your dubias. Here's a don't, and most hobbyist breeding dubias already know this: don't use water. If you're seeing breeding in your dubia containers, you will see babies start piling up in the water dish. They can't do the doggy paddle, nor can they do the backstroke. Avoid using water. That brings us back to water crystals. Do you know what water crystals are really made up of? SAPs, super absorbent polymers, frequently sodium polyacclimates. Sodium, isn't that salt? Go ahead and draw 4. However you look at it, how does a dubia filling up on man-made chemicals sound to you? Not so good? Yeah, I didn't think so either, especially since they will be passed right on to your reptiles when you feed them. Remember when I said at the beginning that I do make mistakes? I have a video or two showing me using water crystals, but I have since mended my sinful ways. I'll talk about what I changed over to in just a second. Many of you are already thinking of alternatives to water and water crystals, right? Vegetables? Correct. But there are bad vegetables. Do not feed any vegetable that is heavily based on water, like lettuce and cucumbers. There will be far less nutritional benefits passed on to your dubias using these vegetables. So finally, let's talk about the best foods that you're going to be feeding your dubias. There are 2, well, maybe 3 or 4. Roaches in nature eat grains, a lot of grains. As a staple in their diet then, we should be offering grains as well. The best foods that you can feed your dubias is chick starter or chicken feed. They're both grain-based. This is something called laina. The protein content in these foods is right where we need it to be. Remember how we saw commercially available roach chow for about $20 a pound? You can buy a 20-pound bag of chick feed from a feed store for $20 or less. Oh, break out your calculators. 20 pounds for $20. That's, carry the one, that's $1 a pound. Better than $20 a pound, right? In fact, I generally purchase 50-pound bags for $21. That's less than 50 cents a pound. We do grind our own feed up to make fine powder, and I believe this helps the baby dubias eat the feed a little bit better. Oh, and I get crumbled and not pellet chick feed. For hydration, I feed a firm vegetable like pumpkins or zucchinis, yams. My favorite vegetable to feed dubias is carrots. Carrots and other orange foods seem to be preferred by your dubias. Make sure you wash and, better yet, peel those veggies before you offer them to your insects to remove any potentially deadly pesticide remnants that could be on the surface of the veggies. A quick point: do not let the veggies mold. If you feed too much, the dubias will not be able to eat it all, and the food will mold. Take it out and adjust the amount that you feed the next time. In summary, and don't forget, we have a very special tip coming up in about 10 seconds. Breed and feed dubias. This is a huge money saver. Dust your feeder insects, as I've said many, many times. The best foods to feed your dubias are the grain-based diets such as chicken feed or chick feed, and to keep them hydrated, feed solid, firm veggies like pumpkins or zucchinis or yams, and again, my favorite is carrots. Oh, you've been waiting for the tips? Well, I'll give you 2 quick tips. First, and a lot of you may have already known this, gut loading your insects before you feed them. Gut loading puts the most nutritional food in your feeder insects right before you feed them. Throw those carrots or yams in just about an hour before you feed your reptiles, and the dubias will plump up like a ballpark Frank hot dog. Anyone remember those commercials? Second, use mealworm cups. They are the best for 1, retaining the dubias so your reptiles don't need to run around the enclosure hunting for them, and more importantly, so your dubias do not burrow into the substrate and turn into Godzilla dubias in 2 months. What's this? You want one more tip? All right, well, you may know this, but some dubia breeders swear that feeding them oranges makes them, oh, what's the word? Frisky. They say oranges will stimulate breeding and result in more babies. I have not found this to be true or false, nor has there been anything proven about this. But I do feed oranges occasionally. What the heck? Do you want to know how to better keep your dubias or how to sort them? Then check out the dubia playlist and the dubia setup videos right here. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.